Everybody, this is Bill from the Bill Heenan Real Estate team at William Ravis Real Estate in the great state of Connecticut. And here we go again. It's been a little bit, but I wanted to get back on camera here and talk about a little bit about an analysis we did a few years ago, but kind of apply it to the dynamics we have taking place in today's real estate market. And basically, we stand here today with greatly increased interest rates. You know, a few years ago, year and a half ago, we were probably in the 4% price range. Maybe a year prior to that, we were in the 2 to 3% price range. Those 2 to 5% interest rate scenarios were driven a lot by, or mostly by, the Feds cutting the rate in order to stem some economic growth. We were struggling. It was a result of a lot of calamities that, happened over and over again. It started with the crash of 2007 and then led us through a couple other calamities, and then finally in the pandemic they really slashed them even further to take us down to rates that were in the 2 to 3% if you had great credit. But none of us expect those conditions, nor do any of us want those conditions, and that's the mindset that we need to maintain in today's interest rate environment of 7 to 7.5%, depending on your credit score. So I think that if you have scores above 720, you can probably get a rate somewhere around the 7%. The lower your credit score, probably the closer you run to 7.5%. But none of us want those calamities to take place. I can probably very confidently say that none of us want to experience the pandemic era again and those pandemic conditions, which brought the interest rates down to 2 to 3%. I know I don't, and I don't think anybody in the world would. So we need to remember that when we see these more balanced, typical economic conditions and rates in the 7 to 7.5% range. These are not bad rates. These are great rates. For several decades, I've been doing this for well over 3 decades at this point. For several decades, we would chase that 7 to 7.5% interest rate. It's only when compared to those those pandemic conditions, those major issues in our economic environment that the Feds needed to stem economic growth that we experienced those crazy interest rate conditions, and now we're into more of a balanced market. And that's what this analysis looks at. It just takes a look to see, well, we hear a lot from buyers today that I'm going to wait for the interest rates to come down. And I would really caution any buyer at this point, as a coach, my kids, someone I know personally, like, this is not a very good mindset. You could be waiting a long time. And I've dealt with people over the years. Some of them I remember years ago saying, I'm going to wait for prices to come down. Well, guess what? Prices never did come down. Now I'm going to wait for interest rates to come down. Guess what? There's a good chance that interest rates aren't going to come down. Who knows what's going to happen next year? But the interest rates are actually very easy to deal with. If the interest rate comes down, you can refinance it for $2,500. Like, that's an easy condition to remedy. But otherwise, as prices continue to rise, that's not a condition that you can remedy. And certainly you can't recapture the equity that you're pouring into your landlord's pocket at this point, right? Like, you're paying to live somewhere. You might be living in your parents' basement, and in that case, the only argument I have there is that get out of your parents' basement and start building your own equity, your own value, your own future estates by owning real estate and watching that real estate grow in value. So, but if you're renting, that's an easy argument. No debate there. Our average rental right now for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath rental is probably around $2,700, depending on what town you're in. And right now you're paying $2,700 a month, probably paying a little bit more, and it's going into the fire. You get no return on that $2,700 a month. But if you purchase the house, in the first year, you get an immediate return. We use the purchase price because generally for that $2,700 a month rental, you're going to pay about $350,000 for that same home of the same square footage. So with 3 bedrooms and 2 baths. So for that $350,000 purchase price, I'm putting 10% down. In the first year, you'll experience $10,000 to $15,000 of equity back into your pocket. Almost half the payment, right? Like, when you really calculate the principal pay down, the mortgage tax and interest deduction off your income taxes, and then the home appreciation, simple appreciation of 2% a year, you will get $10,000 to $15,000 immediately back in your first 12 months of ownership. But over 5 years, that same equity growth looks like about $80,000. And you can see the board here, and I'll put this up as an attachment to the details to the video, but so that you can look at this a little bit more diligently. Rental payments, you get zero equity. Mortgage payments, you get about $80,000, greater than $80,000 in equity when you consider the principal pay down over 5 years of $19,000. The mortgage interest to tax, mortgage interest and tax deductions of almost $27,000. And then simple annual appreciation of 2% a year, which is very, very conservative, by the way. In recent years, we've experienced 5, 6, 7, even upwards of 10% a year. I'm not saying that those conditions are going to continue, but I think if we look at the real estate market over its history, over its analyzed history, or over its recorded history, the appreciation has been well better than 2% a year, but we're going to use a 2% simple appreciation in order for this calculation and not to overstate the equity growth. But simple appreciation, 2% a year over 5 years, that's 10%, $35,000. To all total saying $80,000, $500 in your pocket. So hands down, whether you're going to own the house for a year, whether you're going to own the house for 5 years, or whether you're going to own the house for 10 years, the average is 7 to 8 years, by the way, but whether or not you're going to own the house for 10 years, the equity growth is well worth the investment. And as it's compared to a rental, there is no comparison. One gets you a lot, one gets you nothing. It lines your landlord's pockets, not your own pockets, and it lines their equity. It doesn't line your equity. So once again, you could always hit that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen, and you'll be notified of any new video content put out. And if you're looking for something for me to cover in some new video content, please reach out with a direct message to me, and I'll try to cover it as quickly as possible. And you can always visit us on our website as well, www.thebillheenanteam.net, or you can call me directly on my cell phone at 860-460-8053. I always look forward to your call.